Have you ever wondered what happens when we close our eyes and literally see the unseen? For centuries, mystics, meditators, and spiritual seekers around the globe have reported something absolutely fascinating. We're talking about experiencing incredibly vivid visions during deep meditation or prayer. Colors, lights, symbolic images, even spiritual figures, right there on the back of their eyelids. But what's actually happening in the mind here? Well, today, in this explainer, we're diving into the source material to unpack the architecture of these spiritual visions. We'll look at how different frameworks, from ancient Vedic astrology to modern psychological mapping, try to explain this vast, deeply mysterious inner world of human consciousness. Let's get into it.
So that brings us to a beautifully complex question. Why do we see the unseen? When we close our eyes, the physical world shuts down, right? Yet for some people, a vibrant internal cinema just turns right on. Are these experiences literal signs of higher consciousness? Or are they, simply our own subconscious mind projecting its hidden contents? Let's peel back the layers and find out. Section 1. The mystery of visions. Let's start with the foundational concepts behind this inner sight. Okay, so the concept of subtle consciousness gives us a really fascinating perspective, especially coming from Vedic astrology. Think of human awareness as operating on multiple levels. Up at the surface, we've got our ordinary everyday thinking, the loud, busy chatter of our daily tasks and worries. But beneath all that noise lies a much deeper state of perception. According to the source material, when you engage in spiritual practice, that constant noisy activity of the mind begins to quiet down. It's kind of like letting the mud settle in a glass of water. When the surface calms, it creates a clearing, and that is exactly when hidden impressions, buried emotions, and deep intuitive experiences can finally emerge into our awareness. The visions in this view are just the awakening of this subtle consciousness. Section 2. The astrological map. Now, let's move on to how astrologers actually map out a person's inner sensitivity. So, astrologers don't just take wild guesses here. They actually look at specific houses within a birth chart, almost like a blueprint to gauge how someone connects with higher awareness. First up, we have the 12th house, which is historically associated with spirituality, dreams, meditation, and experiences that totally defy our ordinary perception. Then, moving over to the 8th house, we find profound transformation, psychological depth, and hidden knowledge. And finally, there's the 9th house, which symbolizes wisdom, philosophy, and the drive for spiritual exploration. Now, the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that these houses aren't literal proof that you're guaranteed to have visions. Not at all. Rather, they serve as symbolic indicators. They highlight areas where a deeper consciousness might become incredibly important in someone's life. Section 3. Planets and inner perception. We understand the map, so let's look at the specific planetary players. Astrologers believe that certain planetary influences describe a person's natural tendency toward mystical experiences. Take the moon, for instance. It represents the subconscious mind, our emotions, and our imagination. So a sensitive moon usually indicates strong intuition. Then we've got Jupiter, the planet of higher wisdom, faith, and the search for ultimate meaning. Shifting into Western astrology, we look at Neptune, which is powerfully linked with spirituality, dreams, and things that completely move beyond logical, rational understanding. And over in Vedic astrology, we have Ketu. Ketu is associated with deep detachment, meditation, past life impressions, and these flashes of sudden spiritual insight. When these planets are prominent, astrologers suggest that an individual is just naturally tuned in to that subtle consciousness we were talking about earlier. Bridging the East and West here reveals two totally distinct philosophical lenses. On one side, Vedic astrology leans heavily into the concepts of karma, the influence of Ketu, and the surfacing of past life impressions during meditation. It is deeply rooted in the journey of the soul across time. But on the other side, Western astrology often approaches these visions by looking at the relationship between imagination, psychology, and intuition. The focus here is on Neptune, interpreting the birth chart as a map of unconscious psychological patterns. So dreams and visions are seen more as revealing hidden emotions or creative insights. But what's really fascinating to me is that both systems completely agree that the visions hold meaning. They just differ a bit on whether that meaning is primarily karmic or psychological. Section 4. Karma and the subconscious. Let's transition from the where of the astrological map to the why of the mind. To really grasp the Vedic perspective, we need to look closely at how karma is actually defined here. In this context, we're not talking about some sort of cosmic punishment or reward system. Instead, karma is defined simply as impressions from past experiences and actions carried within the mind. Think of it like a deeply buried memory bank. According to Vedic philosophy, during intense spiritual practice, these long-held impressions can suddenly rise into awareness. So those visions someone sees, they might actually represent unresolved emotions or symbolic messages bubbling right up from the subconscious. It's a reflection of deep inner transformation. This means you really shouldn't interpret every single vision literally. Actually, more often than not, they are highly symbolic expressions of emotional healing taking place just beneath the surface.
So how exactly does this whole engine start? Well, the mechanics are remarkably straightforward. Step 1 involves engaging in deep focus. That could be through meditation, repeating a mantra, prayer, or maybe some intense breath work. Step 2. This intense discipline creates a state where our ordinary, everyday mental activity just gets quiet. All that loud chatter fades away. And then, Step 3, because the surface mind is now perfectly still, the subconscious mind goes into overdrive. Suddenly, images, memories, sensations, and emotions that usually go completely unnoticed have a blank canvas to appear on. Psychologically speaking, it's just the mind's natural ability to create meaningful symbols. But spiritually, it is a profound moment of expanded awareness.
Section 5, the true meaning. Which brings us to the absolute most important question. What do we actually do with these experiences?
Crucially, the source material offers a really vital clarification here. Visions do not equal spiritual superiority. Astrology heavily encourages balance when exploring these phenomena. Having extraordinary visual experiences during meditation doesn't automatically make someone more spiritually developed than someone who doesn't. A person might have these incredibly powerful, vivid visions, yet still deeply lack emotional healing, discipline, and self-awareness in their actual daily life. And on the flip side, someone with a totally quiet, completely visionless practice might experience massive, profound personal growth without ever seeing a single unusual image. Because the real objectives go so much deeper. We're talking about developing higher wisdom, cultivating compassion, expanding our self-awareness, achieving lasting inner peace, and integrating real emotional healing. Whether you interpret your visions as profound spiritual insights, expressions of the subconscious, or karmic symbolic messages, their ultimate utility all boils down to how they aid those 5 goals. They're meant to be mirrors reflecting our inner state. They act as opportunities for self-understanding and personal transformation, rather than just flashy external messages to simply marvel at. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful concluding thought from the text. The greatest transformation does not come from what we see, but from how those experiences change our understanding. Whether it's driven by the karmic impressions of Ketu, the boundless imagination of Neptune, or simply the psychological clearing of a quiet mind, visions remind us that our inner world remains vast and deeply mysterious. The images themselves, they're just the beginning of the conversation. The real question is, the next time you quiet your mind and look inward, how will what you find transform your understanding of exactly who you are?